Ismael El Mayo Zambada, the elusive leader of Mexico's powerful Sinaloa cartel, has long been regarded as one of the world's most notorious and elusive drug lords. For decades, Zambada evaded capture, operating in the shadows while overseeing a vast criminal empire that trafficked tons of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and fentanyl into the United States. Unlike his counterpart, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who was captured multiple times, Zambada remained a ghost, managing to avoid the fate of so many other drug kingpins who have been brought down by international law enforcement.
Ismael El Mayo Zambada, co-founder of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, infamous drug kingpin El Chapo Guzman, were arrested by U.S. authorities in El Paso on Thursday.
That all changed recently when Zambada, now 76 years old, appeared in a U.S. courtroom, having been tricked by U.S. federal agents into crossing the border into the United States. The capture of El Mayo was a shocking development, particularly given his long-standing ability to outwit law enforcement agencies across the globe. But how exactly did U.S. agents manage to outsmart one of the world's most cunning and dangerous criminals? The answer lies in a sophisticated operation that involved deception, intelligence gathering, and exploiting Zambada's vulnerabilities. The legacy of El Mayo Zambada, a drug lord in the shadows. Before delving into the details of Zambada's capture, it is important to understand who he is and why he has been such a formidable figure in the world of organized crime. Ismael Zambada, known as El Mayo, due to his birth in El Alamo, Sinaloa, is one of the founding members of the Sinaloa cartel, a criminal organization that has become synonymous with the Mexican drug trade. Unlike the flamboyant and often reckless behavior of El Chapo, El Mayo has always operated with a low profile, preferring to avoid the spotlight and maintain a quiet yet powerful presence within the cartel. Zambada's role in the cartel has been that of a strategist and financier. While El Chapo often took center stage, orchestrating high-profile escapes and engaging in brutal turf wars, Zambada worked behind the scenes, consolidating the cartel's operations and expanding its influence across Mexico and beyond. His leadership style was less about violence and more about diplomacy and alliances. He forged relationships with other drug trafficking organizations, built supply chains that spanned multiple countries, and ensured that the Sinaloa cartel remained resilient even in the face of intense pressure from law enforcement. Throughout his long career, Zambada managed to evade capture by employing a combination of cunning tactics. He operated in remote areas of Mexico, particularly in the rugged Sierra Madre Mountains, where the difficult terrain made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to track him. He also maintained a vast network of informants and corrupt officials who kept him one step ahead of his enemies and the authorities. These factors, combined with his careful avoidance of the media and public attention, made Zambada one of the most difficult criminals in the world to apprehend. A string of failures law enforcement struggled to catch Zambada. For years, U.S. and Mexican authorities tried and failed to capture Zambada. The Sinaloa cartel leader seemed to have an uncanny ability to disappear whenever law enforcement got too close. In 2010, rumors surfaced that Zambada had agreed to turn himself in to U.S. authorities in exchange for leniency for his family members, but these reports were never confirmed, and Zambada remained at large. His elusive nature frustrated authorities who were able to capture and prosecute many of his associates, but never the man himself. Despite the billions of dollars spent on the U.S. war on drugs and the concerted efforts of agencies like the Drug Enforcement Administration (DA), Zambada was able to maintain his grip on the Sinaloa cartel. His low profile and the fact that he did not engage in the same level of high-profile violence as other cartel leaders made him a particularly difficult target. Over time, many began to wonder if Zambada would ever be captured, or if he would continue to evade justice until his natural death. However, law enforcement did not give up. As Zambada grew older and more isolated, authorities saw an opportunity. They began to exploit the weaknesses in his organization, targeting his lieutenants and cutting off his access to certain resources. At the same time, they gathered intelligence on his whereabouts and the people closest to him, all in preparation for a final move that would bring him into their custody. The U.S. operation tricking Zambada into crossing the border. The breakthrough in the case came when U.S. agents devised a plan to lure Zambada into the United States, where he could be more easily apprehended. According to reports, this involved a complex sting operation that took advantage of Zambada's trust in certain individuals. The exact details of how the operation was carried out remain classified, but sources close to the investigation indicate that U.S. agents were able to convince Zambada that it was in his best interest to cross into U.S. territory. One of the key elements of the plan was creating a situation in which Zambada believed he would be safe and protected upon entering the United States. This was no small feat, given Zambada's deep distrust of law enforcement and his long history of evading capture. However, the agents involved in the operation were able to exploit a combination of personal and financial pressures that Zambada was facing, leading him to believe that surrendering to U.S. authorities would offer him some level of security and protection. Part of the strategy may have involved offering Zambada certain assurances about the safety of his family. As he grew older, Zambada became increasingly concerned about the future of his sons, several of whom were involved in the Sinaloa cartel's operations. By presenting the situation in a way that made it seem like Zambada's cooperation would benefit his family, U.S. agents were able to convince the aging drug lord to cross the border. The arrest, Zambada's sudden downfall. When Zambada finally agreed to enter the United States, he walked straight into a trap set by U.S. federal agents. Upon crossing the border, he was immediately arrested by U.S. law enforcement and taken into custody. The operation was swift and precise, leaving Zambada with little chance to resist or escape. After decades of evading capture, the man who had once been considered untouchable was now in the hands of U.S. authorities. The arrest of Ismael Zambada sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld and law enforcement communities alike. Zambada's capture marked the end of an era for the Sinaloa cartel, which had been under his leadership since the 1990s. It also signaled a major victory for U.S. law enforcement, who had been working tirelessly for years to bring Zambada to justice. The aftermath, the future of the Sinaloa cartel. While Zambada's arrest is undoubtedly a significant blow to the Sinaloa cartel, it is unlikely to bring an end to the organization. The cartel has proven to be incredibly resilient, even in the face of leadership changes and arrests. After El Chapo's capture, the cartel continued to operate, with Zambada and others stepping in to fill the leadership void. Similarly, it is expected that the cartel will continue its operations despite Zambada's arrest. One of the key factors that will determine the future of the Sinaloa cartel is the role of Zambada's sons, particularly Ismael El Mayo Zambada Jr., who has been involved in the cartel's operations for years. If Zambada's sons are able to maintain control of the organization, the cartel may be able to weather the storm and continue its operations. However, if internal power struggles or external pressure from rival cartels destabilize the organization, the Sinaloa cartel could face significant challenges in the coming years.